We're on express elevator to hell. Going down.
2, 1, mark.
Welcome back to my second Creative Craft video. This time I'm going to try to attempt to make an egg from the movie Aliens. The first step is to make a clay model. I'm going to make a clay model around the styrofoam egg just because it's going to fill in the majority of the egg, and that means less clay. I picked up some air dry clay from a local TJ Maxx for cheap, so I was a little worried on how it would turn out. However, in the end, the cheap clay worked out. When sculpting this egg, I tried to imagine what it looked like the first time I watched Alien, Aliens, AVP, any of the classic franchise movies. However, what I quickly realized is I don't really know what exactly it looks like because it is always dark and you can never really see it in the light. This will allow some artistic freedom on my end because at the end of the day, it is a science fiction xenomorph egg. And it's going to look like what I think it should look like. What I'm really saying is all the mistakes I make in this video are deliberate. In order to help the egg stand up, I'm going to cut the very bottom off just so there's a flat surface. And I'm just going to set that to the side so those microplastics can find their way into my organs some other day. Once I have the majority of the egg covered in clay, it's now time to give it some of that weird skin flesh texture that I think all the eggs have. And I'm achieving this effect using a cosmetic kit sponge that I got last Halloween. Once the majority of the egg was textured, it was time to work on the top opening. Now these top openings are usually the easiest thing to see in the movies and shows, so I had a pretty good idea of what it should look like. However, to make it look like the movies, it took a little bit of back and forth work using some different tools. To include the tools at the end of my arms, my digits. I found that using my fingers worked pretty well, especially for blending or just pushing clay around to build up a little bit of thickness around where the gross slimy lips are on the egg. After achieving the overall shape that I wanted, it was time to move on to some more minute details. Anyone who's familiar with these eggs will know that there's some additional texture and details along the egg, so that is what I'm going for. I went ahead and decided to texture the rest of the egg as well, just so it's more uniform. I then decided to get rid of the line around the opening of the egg, so I went ahead and blended it back in. Once the egg was done for the most part, I turned to the base. The base is really just so the egg can sit on something and be a little more secure, but I also wanted to include some environmental details from the movies. I needed a way to get rid of the clay directly underneath the egg so I could easily remove it after I put the mold around it. Now it was time to throw it back to my kindergarten days in Play-Doh and make some snakes. While they're not really snakes, they are part of the environmental detail that you'll often find surrounding the eggs in the environment that the aliens make. So the goal here is just to make different sizes of these little noodles and arrange them around the base to give them a chaotic, organic look that you find in the movies, which I kind of found harder to do than I originally thought. After the overall structure of the environment was done, it was time to give it a little more detail. And in my head, they remind me of earthworms, so I wanted them to have an earthworm effect. So I went ahead and put some of those details around, trying to create some segments. And after that was done, I threw it on one of those drywall spatulas that you use. I don't really know the technical term for it, but it allowed me to actually move the egg without constantly touching it and messing up the clay. After creating some more designs around the egg, it was time to clean it up and get ready to make a mold. After allowing the clay to dry for 24 hours, it was time to knock off some dust and some bits that were just sticking out and would come through on the mold. So I used just a dry paintbrush and some high grit sandpaper just to try to get rid of some of those very top layer surface imperfections. But again, any other imperfections are meant to be there because it's an alien egg and it's what I think it should look like. Once the egg was ready, it was time to pour in the alginate into some cold water and make the mold. I set the egg inside the container I made and poured the alginate over top and let it dry overnight. After it was dry, it was time to flip it upside down and remove the clay without messing up the rest of the mold. This is where the styrofoam egg and cutting the hole out in the bottom really helped, because I was able to drill in a couple screws to give me some grip and pull it out without destroying too much of it. And you see that some of the environmental weird tube snakes stayed behind, but that's okay because it was just filling a negative space, and so you just pull them out. After cleaning up the mold, it was now time to mix the silicone and add the color. The color is just mica powder I got off Amazon that I used for my last project, but I learned that painting silicone is a real pain in the ass, so the goal was to use mica powder to color the entire egg and not need to use any actual paint. You'll see that I used mica powder just in this first pour for the egg because I wanted the egg to actually be a little translucent for the final product. And you'll see when it comes to mixing the silicone for the base, I decided to use some silicone paint that is black. That should make it less translucent and seem a little more solid. So when I put the egg in the base in the container before pouring the alginate, I put it a little too close to the actual wall, which means part of the mold is missing close to the base, which is going to cause a little bit of a mess. So in order to fix this, every time I poured, I ended up creating a little dam using some popsicle sticks and duct tape to try to keep all the silicone in the mold. So after letting it sit for 24 hours, it's time to remove the silicone. This is actually the fourth egg I poured, so the original mold is holding up. You can see that some of the mica powder on the egg actually didn't get stirred in all the way, so there's a little extra color in certain spots. What's the point of having an egg if you don't have anything that comes out of it? So using my 3D printer, I made a facehugger. The facehugger came out pretty good. I will leave a link below in the description of where I got the file. Now all I have to do is prime it outside, and I chose to use the Citadel Color Chaos Black because I thought it was fitting for Xenon Scum. So now it's time to paint the facehugger, and I started with just a base of some flesh colored paint, and then moved on to a dark brown wash that I put all over it, and then just wiped off with a paper towel to let some of those details pop out. After that, I called it done. I think it came out exactly the way I thought it looked like in my head. And it just so happens, I think facehuggers look like poorly painted 3D prints. As you can see, I decided to color the eggs differently every pour, but I still wanted an egg or two that to me looked like a realistic alien egg in the daylight. So I did what I told myself I shouldn't do. I primed it and began painting on silicone. I decided to prime one in black and one in white, just because I have no idea what I'm doing and I wanted to know for the future which one worked out the best. Before priming them, I did give them a good scrub with some sandpaper just so there's a little more texture for the paint to grab onto. Painting on silicone is hard and I advise against it. However, I decided to push through and continue making these two realistic eggs. But I found the trick to painting on silicone is really just to build up some layers of paint, so I used multiple bases and then went on to make the details. The one thing I thought was missing was the wet look that they have in the movies. They always look very slimy, so I decided to use an acrylic medium. It was a gloss medium, but it turned out pretty good. I went ahead and put a dab of black paint in the acrylic medium, just so it wasn't so clear and it looked a little more gross, maybe. As you can see, my patience was running a little thin, so I decided to just start pouring it on, and it honestly came out a little better than trying to be detailed with it. One crucial part I didn't record is what I'm doing with the final product. So, long story short, I took another styrofoam egg, sanded it down to be smaller than the original. I then put it in the mold while the silicone was in it to make a hollow gap when it dried, and I put a tea light in it. Boom, hollow egg. And with that, I call it done.
Movement!
What's the position?
Can't lock in.
Talk to me, Hudson!
Multiple signals. They're closing.
Go to infrared, people. Look sharp.
I got signals. I got readings in front and behind.
Where, man? I don't see shit.
He's right. There's nothing back here. What do you mean they cut the power? How could they cut the power, man? They're animals.
I want you two with trackers. Motherfucker! Come on! Come on! Let me get it, baby! Come on! Get up, baby! Come on! Come on! Come on, you bastard! Come on, you two! Oh, you want some of this? Fuck you! Ah! Fuck you!
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.